again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Hi, how are you? My name is Emma, and I will be your host for today's episode of Author Roundup. Today I have with me self-published author Tony Beadle. Tony Beadle has had a dual career as a professional symphony orchestra musician, then transitioning to symphony orchestra and performing arts center management. He wrote My Father the Father as his childhood was shaped by the church's stand on celibacy and the shame of his mother who had a son by a Catholic priest. Hi, Tony. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me, Emma.
Yes, of course. So your book is a very unique memoir that was published this year. Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. Well, my story is complex insofar as when you hear about children of priests, it's basically the priest denies it, or nothing, that doesn't leave his position as a priest or whatever that is. In my case, my mother and father made the decision that he was a priest, and he was sort of in the higher ranks of the Catholic Archdiocese of Boston, meaning that he was doing fundraisers and working close with the Cardinal Cushing, who was the cardinal at the time. And but what they decided to do was to have, first of all, my mother to have the baby, although I don't think abortion was done as like it is today. It would have been in an alley, that, as we've all heard. So they basically, my mother lied to her families at saying that she was going to New York for a job and leaving, and then my father didn't have to do anything because of the lifestyle of a Catholic priest. You have lots of time, and you don't really report into anybody on a daily basis or something like anything like that. So with that that scenario, my mother had, gave birth to me in a home for single unwed mothers, and then they found a place for me to stay while they went back and connected with their family and all that kind of thing. And my father went and worked in this parish. And then as I got older, they basically created a new life, which was almost like they were a married couple. They bought a house, and he spent about half the week there with me, bringing me up, and my mother was there too as well. But again, her family did not know what was going on. Wow. and did not know of my existence. And certainly on my father's side, it wasn't until he was on his deathbed that his family found out who I was. I told them. So yeah, there's a lot of complexities to it, and I think it's again, I don't want to give it all away.
Yeah.
But in many ways, I had a normal childhood, being brought up by both of them. We took trips, we went on vacations.
Oh, wow.
My mother had a relationship with my father until he died. And then after he got ill with cancer, and he was on his deathbed in his rectory, which is the place where priests live next to their church or nearby. And then that became, that was the beginning of the breakup of the whole thing. My mother lived for a few more years, but and his like I said, his family rejected me. But then I met my mother's family as an adult, and they embraced me. So it's not all bad. And I people say, well, how come, people read my book and they say, well, it's, so difficult, your life. And because I was shuttled around to other foster homes while they were hiding me and trying to figure things out. And when they got the house, which was in Hanover, Massachusetts, just south of Boston, about 20 miles, they didn't tell me that and I was going into first grade. They didn't tell me that he was my father. They always said that he was a friend of my father's. But he spent,
Mhm.
like I said, he spent half the week with my mother and myself, and I never saw them go to bed in the same bed together. But they must have had some kind of relationship because he didn't he sort of accepted the responsibility of being a father, and
Mhm.
he was great. I mean,
Mhm.
we did all the things, we had trips, we had Thanksgiving meals, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So
And so
it's
what inspired you to finally share, your story?
well, it comes in a lot. There's a few factors, when back in the early 2000s, I was working as manager of the Boston Pops Orchestra, as a matter of fact, and I was telling somebody about my story, and they said, "Oh, you should write a book." And I said, "Well, I thought, yeah, maybe I will." And so I started, and what I would do is I would go into work 2 hours early every morning. I had a small, a young child at that time, and he was, the terrible twos. So I had to sort of get out of the house to write. So I'd go into work 2 hours early and write, and I put it. I did a first draft, sort of like a brain dump of everything I could remember,
Mhm.
and so that was probably about 2002, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And then I worked on it off and on, and mostly off. And about 2 years ago, I um, I thought about it more because I was going to retire, and I thought, well, this would be a good time to now revisit the book and see if I want to do anything with it. And I uh, I worked on it and sort of gave it a cleaned it up as much as I could do. I I never read a book about how to write a book, so
Mhm.
I just did it, and that first thing my first draft was a brain dump, just was
Yeah.
everything in the best chronological order I could do. But then I had to start paring it down. I would have friends read it and everything. They would suggest things. So as I say, when I retired, I thought, well, this is now I'm going to really try to go for it, and I did basically a final, what I thought was close to final draft, and I had a friend who it was an editor. She wrote program notes for concerts and things like that. So she's written books and everything. So I said, I don't, why don't you have a look at this and make suggestions? That's all I asked her to do, and that's all
Yeah.
she did do. She said, you know, she would go through a section, 30 or 40 pages, and then we'd have a phone conversation. And she was in Oregon, I was in Massachusetts,
Mhm.
and then she would say, "Well, you might try to move this, move that here, do it." But she never said, you have to rewrite this, or this is wrong,
Mhm.
or grammar or something. I had been pretty careful about that kind of stuff, and I had other people help me with, you know, where look reading it for what are they? I think they call it a line edit. You're looking for typos and all
Yeah. Yeah,
that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but she helped me with a big kind of like these building blocks of the book. So it'd be like moving a paragraph or two to another place and all that kind
Okay.
of
Yeah.
stuff. Far
Yeah.
more than I, far more than I would have thought about, as a first time writer.
Yeah.
So, so then after that, it sort of gelled, and, I started having people read it, and they were just floored by it. And then I thought, well, that seems to, and a lot of people said, oh, this has to be a movie. Um,
Hmm.
so, so that was encouraging. And so then I decided I would try to find, not knowing all that much about the publishing business, I decided I would get the list of, I think there's like 600 agents, literary agents across the United States.
A lot.
So, yeah, there's a lot. And there's some kind of a database of them. So I started, and I mean, I can understand it. They probably get 20 or 30 uh, submissions or requests for submission every day. So I did it. I did it about 40, I think. And then and
Mhm.
they all said the same thing. Oh, give us your first 50 pages or 5,000 words of this, that, and the other. And they'd say things like, well, if you don't hear from us in 90 days, we're not interested, and some were more polite than that, but
Yeah.
I was surprised
That's
at
the
that.
gist.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
said, well, I'll be dead by the time go through the 800 agents.
Yeah. It's like I want to do it now.
Oh, so I went the hybrid route with Archway,
Mm-hmm.
and it's mostly worked out just fine. I mean, I think the book and the production of the book and everything has been, you know, I couldn't see it any better. And they were, good editors. I worked with them on the cover uh, and any other suggestions I had, they were open and tried to accommodate me. So,
Nice.
I, you know, it's getting it out there is another step though, and
Yeah, marketing, yeah.
marketing and everything. And they've done some, um, but I have to dig into it a bit more, and I know enough about marketing from my uh, career in music management that you can't do an ad here and then wait 3 weeks and do another one there.
And so your title is very powerful, My Father, the Father. How did you come up with it and what does that title mean to you?
Well, I had so many working titles,
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the one I did for a while, which was just my own working title, was called Hanover, Mass. And Hanover was the town I grew up in, and
Right.
Mass is what people call Massachusetts. And then, of course, one day it dawned on me, well, when someone's going to perhaps buy this book in Michigan, they're not going to understand that.
Hmm.
And then, so I just let it go. And when I sort of done, I was already, no, I think it was right before I contacted Archway.
Hmm.
um, I was still hammering around with different titles, and nothing seemed to work. But then one day, it was like a gift. An angel came down, and I said, "My Father, the Father." And so I tested it on a few people, thinking, are they going to be confused, or what do they think it means, or anything like that? And they mostly said, "Well, you're talking about one person with two reasons to be called Father." So they figured it out. So I thought that was a
Great.
good
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah, a good movie title too, for sure. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, yeah. So, but so it's it's been a great project. I must say, and
Mhm.
I can't have more respect than right now than I've ever had for people, authors and writers and great writers and people who do it all the time. And I
Mhm.
mean,
It's
it's
hard
just
work.
like yeah, it's hard work, and in many ways, it's like it's the same level of effort and knowledge and talent that being a musician is, and
Mm.
in order so your big performance is your book. So
Yeah.
now that's the analogy I like to think of, that I did it as a musician. I practiced and played with orchestras and all that kind of stuff, and then and that's what writers do. They're writing
Yeah.
things all the time. So
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you first learn about your family dynamic, I guess, and your father's identity as a priest?
Well, that for many once I got older, and this is I tell this in the book, that my mother wouldn't keep. Well, I should take a step back. When they bought the house in Hanover, my father would come down, and he'd come down Tuesday afternoon, stay over, Thursday afternoon, stay over, Friday afternoon, stay over, and then Sunday afternoon and go home, schedule like that.
Hmm.
So, and he'd go out and paint the house that they bought, or doing yard work, and the neighbors would say, "Who is that?" And my mother could not keep her lies straight. So some neighbors
Oh
said,
boy.
"Oh, it's my husband's brother," or others would say, "Oh, he's a family or a family friend," that kind of thing. And I heard that, and I got, I was sort of told as a child I'm not supposed to talk about him to anybody either.
Okay.
Uh, so there was that mystique about it, and but as I got older, I suspected, it had where is it? And my mother couldn't keep stories straight about my family. She never talked about the person who she thought, told me was my father. and never
Mm-hmm.
had much information about him, or never had any connections to any relatives he might have had, which, so the older I got and the wiser I got about it, you know, I gave it a good leaving alone, because
Yeah.
on the one part, I was worried about um, uh, causing angst and misery
Yeah.
and between them, because they get along fine, and
Yeah.
I think they drowned their stress with alcohol a little too much now and then. But I wouldn't call them steady alcoholics at all, because they both had high function. My mother was a church organist. She had about probably 20 or 30 piano students that she taught every week and everything. And my father, he was raising money like by the hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Catholic Archdiocese. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but then one day, my mother's, well, I shouldn't tell this part. So it was just through a coincidence that my mother let the cat out of the bag to one of her nieces, because my mother had gone to Europe, and she sent them a package from Ireland. And
Mm.
when she used the return address, it was in this town,
Oh.
Hanover, and they
Mhm.
thought she was in New York or somewhere else.
Oh, whoops.
None of this could have been done in this day and age because of, caller ID and,
Right. Yeah.
all that stuff,
Yeah.
emails. But yeah, so that began the unraveling of it. And then once I saw that, and I confronted my parents about it. And
Right.
I mean, I was out of college at that point. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
it was so hard. It was so
Wow.
taboo,
Yeah.
but we did it. And they were so fearful that I would just leave them.
Oh.
And I said, no. I said, not that I'm not angry at you. I'm very angry, but two wrongs don't make a right if I leave. So,
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah.
and, you know, and so I stayed,
Yeah. And
but I
what was
sure
your,
felt like leaving.
yeah, what was your relationship like with your mother?
Uh, I think like any mothers would be, I mean, she had a very big personality. She had to be the center of attention. I mean, and she had worked a little bit in, she was directing plays. She was
Oh,
a
wow.
great pianist and singer. She had tons of musical talent. And so but she never pursued it. She just ended up working in a record store, and,
Mm.
that kind of thing. And then she taught piano at home once the house with my father was set up and everything. She did that, and she directed a church choir. So
Oh, wow. So did you get your musical ambition from her then?
I'd say my father also could play piano by ear. I don't. He never
Oh,
really
wow.
studied it, but he sort of self-taught, and you could see there was talent in there. And my mother was more developed as a pianist, and she could really play well. And so I suppose I inherited that
Yeah.
talent,
Very
both of
nice.
them.
Yeah. And so, what are your feelings now towards the church and how it influenced your family's choices?
Well, I mean, right around the time I started writing and everything, there was this, with the cardinal was this guy, Bernard Law. And I believe that he uh, he was caught up in a big scandal in the church with priests who were, you know, having sexual relationships with, men, and uh, just not doing the right thing. And
Yeah.
he had to resign because there were so many priests that were doing this. There was this like a long list of names, I guess, at the time. And
Hmm.
I thought, well, I sort of put two together. I said, well, if priests could be married, it wouldn't be like this, I mean,
Hmm.
because they'd be like, oh, if you go to your local, Episcopal church or
Yeah.
Congregational or Presbyterian, the ministers, man or woman, are good bet that they're married or not, but they have that option. And um, and of course the church just puts this chain around the priest's neck that you're not to do that. And
Yeah.
there's nothing about that in the age of the apostles, and why celibacy should be all important.
Burn.
And
Yeah.
then, the other thing, Emma, that I figured out, um, when my father would come to my house, our house in Hanover, and stay there and go back and forth, the hours, and the number of hours he was not at home, you might say, is probably the same amount of hours not at home that someone who's a sales executive and has to go to New York every couple of weeks, or traveling on the road. I mean, many jobs take, one or both parents away for many
Yeah.
hours in the
Right.
course of a week. And his number of hours at home was probably just the same as any person who was in some kind of complicated job and travel and everything like that. That Yeah, he's there all the time, but then other times he's away and they but come back.
Mhm.
Many families function that way. And
Yeah.
so with my time, with not having my father there, was pretty much the same as, somebody whose
Normal.
father was a salesperson on the road.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no good argument for the setup with it is with celibacy, and just
Yeah,
just
for
just
sure.
trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. And so are you an only sibling too?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
As far as I know.
And so you
Yes.
mentioned that after your parents passed away, you met relatives 25 years after, you were born. What
Yes.
what was your experience like with your extended family, I guess? And what
Well, yeah. With my father's family, I met them because, well, he had cancer,
Mhm.
and he was bedridden, and
Mhm.
basically he set up his. I think today there would have been a good chance he might have survived it, or they might have tried something, but then they just had to sit there and watch him get weaker
Mhm.
and weaker. So he was in the rectory, the priest's residence, where there were three other priests as well as he all lived. So when I was there, I pulled one of the priests aside and I told him that I was his son and I wanted to have entree into the rectory 24/7, and I don't
Yeah.
want to bother anybody if you just give me a key, because he's my
Yeah.
father. And the
Yeah.
other, I thought, you know I thought, well, that this when I tell this other priest, he was like the number two priest in the place, that he's going to be shocked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, and he wasn't. He said, "Oh,
Wow.
okay." He said, "I did notice your father he perks up when you come and visit." So, because I'd
Oh,
I'd come and visit on my own. I was not living with my mother, or I had my own life at that point.
yeah.
And so that's where I met his brother and sister, and two of the daughters of his sister. And so they just thought I was a friend and everything. But then after it, and I don't want to give it away too much because it got
Mhm.
pretty weird and nasty with them.
Mhm.
But and especially, they before they understood who I was,
Mhm.
they thought I was a friend. Although it was weird that a guy who's in his late 20s is a friend with a Catholic priest, and
Yeah.
but they asked me to be if I would be a pallbearer in um,
Oh,
my parents, my father's funeral,
wow.
which I was. So, and that was probably the most emotional moment I'll ever have, and it's depicted in the book. You can read it. So, um, again, I don't want to give any secrets away, but uh, and then after that, um, my I had some litigation with them because my father claimed that he had left his estate, although it wasn't much, to my mother and myself, but he didn't. And so I was quite angry at him
Oh.
after he died for that. I mean, briefly.
Mhm.
And I went to a lawyer, and it wasn't enough money, but it meant a lot to me because it was sort of validation as being
Yeah.
his son, you
Yeah.
know. And so we got a deal. They didn't want the money. They didn't want It wasn't that much money, but what his sister really wanted was his car, and I didn't want his car, so that was okay. But then they never spoke to me. So So
Oh.
that's their side. My mother's side, uh, when um, they found out what my mother was doing long before my father died,
Hmm.
and and so I would go and visit them. They were all in this town, a small city named Waltham, which is closer to Boston um, than I was living in the town of Hanover. Or I was living in Boston, but they were in this other town called Waltham. And but they were, and when my mother's sister died, this gets complicated. You can is that my mother asked me to go up and meet all my cousins and relatives at that funeral. At first, I didn't want to because my mother had hidden me from them and everything.
And you were like, what, in your 20s, meeting your
Yes.
cousin for the first time?
Yeah.
Oh
Yep.
man.
And my aunt, my mother's sister, who had passed away. So the first place I met my cousins was at the wake, the
Hmm.
Catholic thing where they
Oh wow.
have visiting hours and everything.
Hmm.
But they, unlike my father's family, they just embraced me like, oh, come on down, it's and they've been great. I mean, I a couple of weeks. I have two of my cousins that I met that day live rather close to where I am, and I have no siblings,
Hmm.
so they're my family.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's when
awesome.
I met them. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and they're here. Yeah, and their kids are around too.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's because I don't. I mean, I don't. I think I said it. I don't have siblings. Mhm.
Yeah. And so writing about, family secrets, I'm sure can be painful. What was the hardest part about putting your story onto paper?
I didn't experience pain in writing
Oh,
anything
okay.
down.
Okay.
No, um, I just thought I kept thinking about the story of my father, but I also wanted to interlace it with anecdotes of my growing up. And so if you read it, you'll read about the nuns that I went to a Catholic school,
Okay.
stories about the nuns,
Hmm.
stories about my education as a musician and in college as a musician. Not too many. And I had a lot of them because when I did the brain dump version, I was thinking I didn't know where I was going, so I just wrote everything. Um,
Right.
but people people really respond to it. They like the idea I'm telling these little anecdotes or things that things about the Catholic Church or the nuns at the school and that kind of things. So but I didn't. There was nothing stressful for me about it.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it
Um,
wasn't like opening a door that I'd closed or something. Not at
okay.
all.
Yeah. And so, what do you hope readers take away from your story? Who did you, or I guess, who did you write this book for?
Oh, um, well, I wrote it for myself. I mean,
Hmm.
I thought it was a good example of why uh, the church should not hang on to celibacy.
Hmm.
And um, and the funny thing is, in my travels, not around when I started the book, but before that, I've actually met two people that were children of priests at two different parties,
Oh, wow.
and they were talking about it, and that the father, their father, in both cases was in denial. This is pre DNA, by the way, so
Hmm.
yeah. But I think anybody who reads it has to understand that the Catholic Church has gone down the wrong chute in the whole thing, and it's its payback is that you have again all these problems with molestations and that
Hmm.
sort of thing, and there's not much interest for men these days to want to be Catholic priests, and so Catholic and the Catholic Church attendance is way down. So
Hmm.
if you go to a Catholic church
Hmm.
where there's used to be five masses on Sunday, now there's two, and the
Hmm.
priests that used to live at that church, or sometimes two priests or three. In my father's rectory, there were four.
Oh, wow.
uh, there's now just one, and they come and visit and say the mass, and then they go to another church to do it. So there aren't enough priests to go around
Hmm.
as there were like when I was growing up. So
Hmm.
so it's a caution. It's not a cautionary tale, but it's not a. It's a. It just shows you what's happening or what did
Yeah.
happen, and there's
Yeah.
probably lots more of it happening.
Happening today. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
or people aren't signing up for the priesthood, which is kind of a shame too. If they could be married, I mean, look at uh, non-Catholic Christian churches. You have the minister and the minister's wife, and there always seems to be enough ministers to go around. I don't know that for sure, but
Mhm.
they're like normal. They have kids. They have all the same problems. I mean, someone pointed out to me that the Catholic Church has this uh, process for prospective bride and grooms to go and have these meetings or instructions to the Catholic Church, and I think they're called pre-Cana conferences, and the priest is you know talking to them about marriage. Which, I
Mhm.
mean, how ironic is that? The
Yeah.
poor priest is single, or he's not legally
Forever.
married. He may
Yeah.
be he may be in married in another sense, but like my father was. But so I don't know. The Catholic Church, they can do whatever they want.
Mhm.
I'm not here to pick it apart, but it did its number for me. I know
Yeah.
that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Do you think that your father's like ideas about morals when it comes to the Catholic Church changed like since knowing you and having you in his life? Did he have any regrets maybe or do you think he would have?
Well, I never really talked to him about that. That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I think that having me as his son he seemed to be very happy. I mean, I think he was happy with my existence and
Yeah.
relation to him, relationship. Where I don't think he was happy was with the lying. He could never tell his family. He could never uh, uh, change. He couldn't have the courage to leave the priesthood and be a father,
Yeah.
just be my
Yeah.
father or anything like that. He had too much vested in it. And I
Wow.
remember one time, he and his family, he and his brothers and sisters had shared this summer house down off the coast, uh, on the near Boston,
Hmm.
and so it was like a beach and all that. And so one time he took me down there to go swimming, and then he said, "Oh, my mother," and then he said, "Your mother and you, meaning me, you can go there and stay there for 3 or 4 days right on the beach. It's right. Walk out the door and there's the sand." And so we did, and then the second time I went down there another time. He took me, and he we weren't going to stay there, but he said, "Oh, come on, I want you to meet um, my mother." So, and his mother was there, and she was I don't think she was totally sentient. I think she was uh, just feeble and elderly. Um, but I met her, and she, hello, and everything. It was like a minute or two, and I remember my father telling my mother, and then my mother told me in later years that event, when he went back to my mother, he just burst into tears that I had met my grandmother, but I didn't know it. So
Oh man.
yeah, so he had some
So
skin in
sad.
the game emotionally himself that
I
way, and
bet.
what what
Yeah.
what, what the whole thing was.
Hmm. Yeah. So how has sharing your story changed your relationship with faith and truth and for even like forgiveness?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I would like to think that I will always give forgiveness the best shot I can. And I don't, you know, if I, I've not been wrong that many times that I've had to find deep forgiveness for anything serious of a
Mhm.
serious nature. No one's ever done anything really wrong to me, or vice versa. But I think that, I had to exhibit forgiveness. My parents were worried that I wouldn't forgive them once all the truth came out. And I said, well, two wrongs don't make a right. You shouldn't have done it. But, what good is it going to be for me to be angry and walk away and not talk to
Mhm.
you or something?
Yeah.
So I don't really like to keep, like things hanging out there that I've offended somebody, or I like to wrap it up and try to get back to them in a reasonable way. If
Yeah.
I have past relationships and friendships from time to time. We all have that, something
Yeah.
happens,
Yeah.
and I'm very sensitive about it. Um, but it takes two to tango. I mean,
Mhm.
with relationships too. But um, but I'm conscious that it's better to forgive and forget than
Yeah.
to hang on to it.
Absolutely.
It's crazy to hang on to it. It's not worth it.
Yeah. It's stressful.
That's stressful.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
it.
So how did it feel to have your book finally created, and how what did it feel like getting your book and holding it for the first time after having a long journey with, writing it and editing and getting it published?
Well, I was thrilled. I was just thrilled, and I'm thinking, I can't believe it. There it is, and there's the story. And I looked, and I had there's a little section of pictures in the middle, and
Hmm.
so just so everybody knows, I'm just not, making this up. There's pictures of me with the priest. There's even a picture of me wearing my father's priestly garb, red robe and all that stuff. So that validates my story, lest people
Hmm.
think I'm just making it up. And and so I feel that I would hope it would be a powerful story, or a cautionary item for the
Hmm.
Catholic Church to think about
Yeah, absolutely.
about it. Yeah, and I'm sure there are tons of similar situations with Catholic priests and what they do.
Hmm.
My father took a very high route. He could have left the priesthood, he could have denied it for the rest of his life, whatever. But it shouldn't have to happen that way.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel, well, if I've helped to move that dial a little bit, then we'll see. It would be great. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Is there a part of your book that was the most memorable part to write, or most eye-opening or important part for
You
you?
mean something that I hadn't thought about, or well,
Um, just like when you were writing it, was there a special part of your book that you feel that you liked the most?
oh, I see. Um, well, I did enjoy writing the little anecdotes of my life with my uh, education, talking about my friends, or talking about I played the string bass, and my teacher was a player in the Boston Symphony, and he was quite the
Um,
character. So telling a few funny stories about him, and going to the lessons, and so it was fun to sprinkle little anecdotes in there in my life, and I guess sort of just to give everybody a break from the sad
yeah,
parts.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I didn't do that deliberately, because as I said, I did a brain dump, and then people, as I got it, people would read it and they say, "Oh, I love all your stories and everything." And then so
That's nice.
I sort of kept them in, and it works. I know it
Mhm.
works because so many people uh, they say two things: how well written it is, and I'm not bragging because I'm not a writer, and I was shocked at that. And then the other thing they say is, I couldn't put it down. And those come
Oh,
from
that's a good one.
all
That's a nice
walks of
compliment.
life, and people that don't know each other, and you know and so um, in my book talks that I've done a few, and a couple of book clubs and everything. That iteration has come forth, and from different different parts,
Mhm.
around here. So I'm just really I'm pleased that I pulled it off, and
Yeah.
it seems like a grown up did it. So so so
Yeah.
I'm happy about. Yeah.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
as I said, and I hope it will fall into the right hands sometime, and uh, you know give the church pause for thought, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And so have you had what's the nicest feedback or review you received about your book?
Oh, there's plenty of them. If you go to Amazon, people leave their comments, and
Mhm.
they a lot of them, and verbally I hear it too. Is kind of
Mhm.
what I said, that it's so well written. I can't put it down. I have a friend. He's an editor himself, of different kinds of books, not writing like I do, but and he said that, and usually he's very fussy about things, because that's his mo. And
Mhm.
uh, and he wasn't. He was very complimentary of about it and everything. So that to me has been a big surprise. Big
Yeah.
surprise.
Yeah.
I thought, well, it's good. People are good, but people say, it's like somebody said it was like a thriller. You wanted to see what was going to happen
Oh,
at the
nice. Yeah.
end. So I'll take it all, you know. But the reviews in the Amazon things, they kind of sum it up.
Yeah. Nice.
And they all are different riffs on what I just said.
Uh-huh. And what about your family? Did you mention that you have children?
Yes, I have one son. He's
Okay.
about 28 years old, and he
Okay.
he lives in Europe. He's a musician
Oh,
himself, and he
wow.
and he plays in an orchestra in Germany.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, he has a in the world of symphony orchestras, he plays the viola, which is an instrument that's
Oh.
bigger than a violin and looks like a
Mhm.
violin though. And he went over there to go to like a grad school program that the orchestra in Bremen was had, and uh, they didn't accept him. They said, we want you to audition for the lead viola player in the orchestra.
Oh my
and
goodness.
and he did, and he got the job. I mean, he knew it was a gamble, but he did it. So he's been over there, he won, and now he plays with that orchestra, but he also goes around to other orchestras. That orchestra tours a lot, so he's been around the world. And
Oh my goodness. That's
and I
so
think he
fun.
and then he he just he likes to uh experience strange cuisines and all that stuff. So, going to Asia is a gourmet treat for him. I, I just can't believe some of the things he's had. But uh, but he also goes and plays at these other orchestras in Europe. I think he just got done with a tour with the, of all things, the Estonian National Orchestra. And he sent me a recording. It sounds great. And so he's living his life that he wants to have.
Yeah, sounds
Really,
like it.
really great. Yeah, he's very
Yeah.
happy. Really happy.
So has he read your book or does he know the extent
Yes.
of the back? Okay.
Yeah, he knows it all. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's not going to let it bother him.
Yeah.
He's respectful and everything, but you know, I think he's not the kind of person who, at least as far as I know, that he's introspective enough to see, well, what has it been passed on to another generation, any dysfunction that I ended up with in my life or something. But I
Mhm.
don't I don't think so. He's too
Yeah.
far away anyway. He doesn't have to hear me.
Yeah.
No.
Wow. Well, what are some personal or professional book goals that you have coming up for this year? What do you want to work on or
Oh, well, I'd like to figure out. What I have to work on right now is I do, because of my music management career, I have
hmm
contacts in the music business, and some of it is people who work in Hollywood as film composers. So
Oh.
through that route, I have I've sent one of them happens to be John Williams, the conductor. He's 94. The guy Star Wars and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
So I mean,
gosh.
yeah, I worked with him at the Boston Pops. He was the conductor for many years. So I played with him when he was the conductor,
Oh my
and then
goodness.
after that, he would come and guest conduct during the pop season.
My
Or so yeah. So it was great fun. So I've he's 94. So and I haven't talked to him in a few years, but
I can't
want to
believe you
get a
know
I
him.
want to get a copy to him, and I sent it to his home address, which I had, but I was told that he may not get it because he's so much more of a celebrity now that he had people send it to his house address because they know he lives there,
Oh
but
my.
he has helpers that just have to take in the piles of mail, I guess, every day, fan mail and that sort of thing. So
Hmm.
my book got tossed, but I have other contacts because of John that
Oh
I can
wow.
get it into his hands. And then there's another there's another one or two people that work in the business there that not exactly as close that way, but that I can get copies of the book to. We'll see. You know,
Very cool.
I
Yeah.
mean, one thing. John works with Steven Spielberg, and one time my son and I went over to visit him where he worked at DreamWorks Studio, which is in outside of Hollywood,
Yeah.
and so he has this room, and on the he has like a bench on one side of the room. It's probably about 6 to 10 feet long, and a table like a tabletop, like the top of a bookcase, and on it are just stacks and stacks of these papers, and with uh, stapled together or in binders and all of that,
Hmm.
so I was at that point. This is about maybe 6 or 7 years ago now. Um, I was telling him about my book, and he said, "Oh, he was interested in everything." But he said, see all that paper on the shelf over there. Those are all, he said, those are all movie scripts that people have sent to Steven Spielberg, and he and John are buddies, and so Steven asks him, John, to take some of them, and then if he thinks any of them were worth a look by Steven Spielberg, to hand it to him. So he said, Steven Spielberg just can't sit there and read them. It's just the
Yeah.
whole supply is way too large. So,
Oh
so
my gosh.
I will see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now when I see movies and see movie scripts and everything, I think, boy, whoever did it, unless they're established and just crank them out or something. If it's a new writer or a new person or an adaptation of a current book, you know, I
Hmm.
more power to them. I just can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing they can get through that.
Oh yeah.
Mess. I wouldn't call
Yeah.
it mess, but complicated. You know. So
Yeah. Well, I have to ask, is John nice? Is he
oh,
cool?
he's very nice. He's a very
Oh,
nice
that's so
person.
cool.
Oh, you
Nice.
couldn't have a nicer person. He's always polite. He works hard. I mean, and you're sitting there talking to him, and he's an avid reader. I think, and then all you think in your head is, this is the guy that wrote Jaws. Two
Yeah.
two notes. And Star Wars
And Home
and
Alone, Harry
Harry
Potter.
Potter. Yeah, it's just he's an unbelievable composer. He is, and he
So
works
cool.
very hard. He's
Very cool.
he's and a friend told me that he's retired, but now he's working on some other movie now with Steven Spielberg. But at 94, I mean,
Oh my
last picture I
gosh.
saw of him, he was in a wheelchair, but he probably
Mm.
does that because he's just getting worn out, right? I mean, I'm sure,
Yeah.
and intellectually he's the same as ever.
Yeah.
So
Very cool. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Do you have anything else that you want to share with our audience before you go?
no, I just hope that people will derive something from the fact that my upbringing was very complicated and but loving, and the
Mhm.
loving part of it is what saved me. And
Mhm.
so whatever situation anyone is in, don't throw the love away
Mhm.
if you can find it and it's there, because that's what will save it.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and thank you for being on our show today.
Sure.
Yeah, I think your story is very unique and I hope that others, really wish to read it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you're listening and you wish to purchase Tony's book, you can head to archwaypublishing.com and purchase it through the online bookstore. It's also available on Amazon and Barnes& and Noble. And thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.